all day to set that up, and I leave it to the last minute. Okay, so my name is Colm O'Rourke. Thank you all for coming in. I am involved in business development. I'm based in our Galway office, and this is obviously our main office here in Dublin, but we have offices in Galway and Limerick, and in the US as well. Our head office is in Nashua, New Hampshire, about an hour outside of Boston. So I suppose what I'm going to look at is it's going to cover Brexit at a kind of a higher level, because there's a little bit of uncertainty. I don't know how many times you're going to hear that word tonight. So there isn't a huge amount of detail, but whatever there is, we're going to talk about it. And then I'm going to look at MDR and sort of the implications of that. So I guess initially, just to start, a little bit about NSAI as an organisation. There's 4 divisions. So our standards division, obviously we are the National Standards Authority for Ireland. So we are involved in creating and updating standards, both at a national and international level. Certification division, so that's the part which medical devices comes under, but we're involved in certifying other products as well, more than just medical devices, and we certify to other standards, ISO 9001, general quality standards, there's environmental, health and safety standards. Legal metrology this is our department that are involved in certifying and inspecting instruments that are involved in trade, any measuring instrument involved in trade. So petrol pumps is the typical one. And then finally, national metrology. So this is based in our office down in Glasnevin. This is the home of measurement in Ireland. So this lab holds the national unit of measure for temperature and weight and things like that. So a lot of companies will get weighing scales calibrated off the national standard there. So that's just NSAI in general. What I'm going to look at is current status initially. So this is just a few points of where we are with the sort of MDR specifically. Going to then from that look at how we think this is, and this is a notified body point of view, how we see that impacting on a practical basis for you guys in the industry, and how maybe that's some considerations how that might inform regulatory strategy. Then we'll talk about Brexit and we'll wrap up. So with my MDR, my colleagues are going to go into an awful lot more detail than I am with quality systems and tech file, and they're the guys that are going to put you to sleep. I'm just going to talk about the sort of broader implications about it. Okay, so we'll start things off. Current status, some important timelines. I won't go back into sort of the history of the MDR and why we have it and everything. I think it's been around long enough now. I think we know all of that. Came into force in May of 2017. May of 2020 is our date of application, which is really not that far away at all. And then another very important date is May of 2024. So this is when MDD certificates can potentially remain valid on the market until that date. I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well, because I'm going to discuss the, I suppose, different choices companies have in terms of converting early or converting late to the MDR. What's important to remember, and this will come up a couple of times tonight, is that while you can keep your device on the market under the MDD out to 2024, from 2020 there are certain MDR requirements that you must comply with, and some of the more significant ones of this are the post-market surveillance requirements. There's registration of economic operators and that. So again, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Current status, from our point of view, we think that preparation for the MDR is pretty well underway in industry. So we're discussing quite frequently with a lot of our clients, kind of some of it's formal, some of it's semi-formal, as to sort of where they are with their plans for transitioning to MDR. And we think this is really useful on both sides, really, so that the company can kind of bounce ideas off us and that we get an idea of what our clients are intending on their transition plan. So it's something that no matter who your notified body is, we really encourage you to just talk, as openly as you can with what your plans for transitioning your products are. It's really important to do. I should have said at the start as well, so all these slides are going to be made available on our website afterwards, so you don't need to worry about notes. Okay, notified body designation process. So we have one designated so far, so it's genuine congratulations to BSI for being the first designated. The only problem is it's their UK notified body that was designated and not the Dutch one that's en route. So while we do have one over the line, it's not that much use to anyone right now because of the B word, which we'll talk about plenty later on. We know from a Team NB survey, there's about 30 notified bodies that have applications in process in various stages. So I'll talk about the numbers of notified bodies a little later on. This is kind of just where we are. It's a lengthy and time-consuming process. We all know this. We accept it. It should be. I mean, the MDR is a significant change for everyone, for you in industry, and for us as notified bodies. And it's important that we have to go through, a rigorous process of designation, so that when we then come to assess your products, that we actually know what we're doing. So we understand that it's a lengthy process. It would be great if things could move faster, but there's so many moving parts with this that you kind of just have to accept it as it is. What we see a lot is manufacturers are recertifying their existing device under the MDD now, so that they can avail of that grace period out to 2024, so that they can delay MDR transition if that suits their plan. So the impact of this, I suppose, is, and any of you involved in preparing recertification reviews to submit to a notified body, that's, there's a lot of work from your point of view in industry to do that, and then a lot of work from our point of view to review that. So we know when files are coming in for review because it's a regular cycle. So we have a lot of products now that wouldn't normally be coming for recertification for another 12, 18, maybe even 24 months. But those files are being pulled forward and submitted to us now, so that companies can avail of that grace period. And that makes sense for a lot of companies. But I suppose the effect of that then is a lot more work for industry and notified bodies right now. So just something to be aware of. Guidance documents and common specifications, they're going to be created. I realize there's not a huge amount of comfort in telling you they're going to be created. We don't know exactly when. The clinical guidance document, we feel, is probably the first one that's going to appear at some point, hopefully the not too distant future. But these will be documents that sort of help clarify the understanding for both notified bodies and manufacturers of certain elements in the MDR. Common specifications, initially the emphasis is on the Annex 16 products that don't have an intended medical purpose. So we're expecting some common specifications on those that will help manufacturers achieve certification for those products. Okay, so if we think what we've just talked about, which was the current status, kind of what's happening, and then we try and look at what effect that's going to have on you guys in industry. So it goes without saying, technical documentation revision. That's an obvious one. There's very few of your documents that are going to get away without being affected by the MDR. They're not going to need revising in some shape or form. So again, my colleagues are going to go through this in more detail, but just to highlight obvious things: general safety and performance requirements, which were your all essential requirements, post-market surveillance, risk, labeling. All of this is a huge amount of work, and that's the implication, one of the implications of the MDR. The additional testing aspect it's a little less certain. I put a couple of examples here. Hazardous substances. So the MDR is a lot more explicit about some certain hazardous substances. That may feed into a label change as well. So there may be additional testing required to determine concentrations of particular substances that you may not have had to do before. Biocompatibility, I suppose, like, companies have already got biocompatibility testing done right now. But what's really important to consider, the whole picture here with MDR, is when we begin looking at an MDR product that's submitted to us, that's not a recertification review. It doesn't matter if the product's been on the market for 5, 10, 15 years. That is a new product application, and we are viewing it as if we have never seen it before, even if we've looked at it 2 years ago under the MDD. So what can happen sometimes when products are on the market for a very long time and they're in a sort of comfortable swing of a recertification cycle after recertification cycle, sometimes some standards and updates to standards can get missed, where the product is no longer complying with the most recent harmonized version of that standard, and some can just fall through the cracks. Nothing's gonna fall through the cracks with MDR. So you need to really look at your products. What standard? I put biocompatibility up 10993, that's been revised recently. What is the latest harmonized version? Is that the one that you are complying to? So that's a really important consideration. And of course, the knock-on effect is, if you're not complying to the most recent, do you then have to do additional testing to gain compliance? There's other, human factors engineering is become really important under the MDR. The 62304 software lifecycle validation, again, is that done? You got to put yourself sort of in our mindset where you know your product really well. Sometimes we don't, and we're viewing this as if we've never seen it before. So you really need to get into that mindset, I think, when you're looking at products or preparing tech files. Clinical investigation, colleague Yvonne, our chief clinical evaluator, is going to talk an awful lot about this, but just to flag that this is an implication. Some products may require a clinical investigation or additional investigations to be done. That's a serious that's a serious undertaking, and like I said, Yvonne's going to talk about that later on. Okay, time. Again, a lot of this is obvious. There's a lot more work to do, therefore it's going to take more time. You need to engage with your notified body far sooner than you normally would, and this is just to benefit everyone. So, I mean, our workload has increased the same as yours. So you may have been used to it in the past, being able to call your notified body and getting a review slot for a new product, or you're adding a new location to your 1345 cert, and you can get that within a month or 6 weeks or something like that. That is not going to happen anymore. So you need to plan really, really far in advance. And I mean, the thing is, you guys are planning these changes far in advance anyway, because you have to, because of operational reasons. But you need to consider now, I need to contact my notified body. And if they tell you, look, it's too early, come back to us in 2 or 3 months, that's fine, but at least you're on the radar. So it's a really, really important point. Longer time to market, look, it's a potential that you need to consider. Again, this is for new products, I suppose, coming to the market. If additional testing is required, additional review time, the net effect of that is it may take longer to get a product to market. Staffing, I suppose you can, a way potentially of mitigating that is if you can beef up your staff in your regulatory departments. There's more hands doing the same amount of work, so it may speed it up. It's very easy to say that, I know. Cost, look, cost and time are completely interlinked. So the longer it takes a notified body to review something, the more data is, the more that's going to cost, basically. And clearly, if you're doing increased testing, a clinical investigation, that's a huge, huge cost burden that you need to consider. These points are, while they will affect everyone, I think they may disproportionately affect startup companies and those that are in quite early stage, because in terms of funding, you may not have incoming revenue because you don't have a product on the market. So if you're out there looking for funding, you need to be aware, and I suppose you need to be aware, but you need to make the people aware that you're looking for funding, that typically this product may have taken 2 years and X amount of money to get to the market. Under MDR, if your plan is to launch that product in Europe, now it will likely take longer and likely cost more money. It's very product specific and there's no guarantees, but it's just something you have to be aware of at the earliest stage possible, I think. Okay, so notified body capacity issues. So the numbers are going down. We know that. We a high of about 83 back in maybe 2010. Gradually, that number has been coming down, sitting between 55, 6, 7, 8. It fluctuates a little bit. So the numbers are going down, and that's obvious. The less notified bodies there are, that's going to affect capacity. But not alone do we have decreased the number of notified bodies. There's a significant increase in the amount of work. Part of why the numbers are going down are the increased competency requirements that the MDR is bringing us. And again, we can't complain about that. We need highly competent staff to review the data that you're submitting to us. You have highly competent staff in industry preparing it, so it makes sense. But that is a challenge for some notified body. Well, for every notified body, it's a challenge. It's proving too much of a challenge for some notified bodies, and that's, I think, what's leading to some of the numbers going down. Longer lead times, increased workload. This is a very depressing slide. I'm sorry, there's not much positive news in this. Wait till we get to Brexit, that's full of positivity, so don't worry. Okay, so it's just to flag with you. I mean, it's an obvious, we're all aware, but again, it's just to keep it in mind. Okay, so we're kind of moving on a little bit to the strategy side of things now. So again, bearing in mind the implication of what we talked about, how can you take that on board and potentially tailor your strategy to that? So with MDR adoption, you've kind of got two options. You're either going to convert early or you're going to convert late. And there's pros and cons to both. It's a very individual decision to the company, and even more so than the company, to the product, because within a company, you may have some products converting early and some converting late. With early adopters, now the caveat with early adoption is your notified body has to be designated, so you can't do anything until your notified body is designated. But that's coming, don't worry. So there is an element of unknown, of course. someone's got to be the first product that that goes through the process. So that's just to, I suppose, keep in mind. An advantage, I think, is it may be tidier in terms of documentation. So what I mentioned in one of my earlier slides about products that can remain on the market under the MDD out to 2024 still have to comply with some MDR requirements from 2020. So you've got a tech file that is complying to the MDD and is actually also complying to some elements of the MDR. And how is that going to be managed by your quality system? So that's a consideration as well. And I guess companies in earlier development, the MDR is a lot clearer. So like the MDR gets a lot of negative press, but there is some really, really fantastic elements to it. I mean, obviously overall the patient safety improvement is the key, but the fact that it is so prescriptive in terms of, for one, technical documentation, and again, Susan's going to speak more about this, but your Annex 2 and Annex 3, it tells you how to build your tech file. So if you are a smaller company and you have the choice to go MDD or MDR, MDR is more prescriptive for you. So it's, it's something to consider. So these are companies that are availing of that Article 120 transition provision. They want to keep their product in the market until 2023, 2024 under the MDD, and then convert to MDR. More time to prepare, that's an obvious one. So that's a huge advantage. Again, particularly if you need to do additional testing, if you need to do gather additional clinical data, whether that's in the form of an investigation, or perhaps you're going to gather data in the post-market phase of an existing product, so whether it's a PMCF or something like that. We hope, well, you will have guidance documents. They are going to be created at some point. They're going to be a big advantage for the companies that are converting later. A drawback is, so in that Article 120 in the MDR, it states that if your product is on the market under the MDD out to 2023 or 2024, from May 2020, you cannot make a significant change to design or intended use of that product. Okay, so if you have a well-established product, you're probably not going to be planning to make any changes, so that perhaps is not an issue for you. But if you have a product that's, it's quite recent to the market, often companies are tweaking that product in those early years. So you need to be aware that if you're on the market post 2020 under the MDD, you can't change design or intended use. MDR requirements, we talked about this, will be applicable, and then notified body capacity to certify ahead of 2020. So if you want to avail of that transition provision, you're probably going to need to recertify your device now, or it should already be in process, so that you can then get the cert out to 2024 or whatever the max is. So getting in front of a notified body to do that may be a challenge. Excuse me. So longer term approach needed. I hope that's come across from what I'm saying. It's nothing's going to happen quickly anymore. I think we all know that, but it's just important to be clear because of extended approval times and the significant changes. Like I said, you guys in the industry, you work on them very early from a design phase, but you're not in the habit, I think, of contacting your notified body that early. That's something that I think a mindset that has to change. Portfolio review. Look, this is an unfortunate element of what the MDR may bring to us. So if you have a number of products on the market, you look at the cost of maintaining them. So achieving MDR certification and then maintaining them on the market. If that cost is more than the revenue you get from the product, then perhaps products will be retired. We don't know that, but it's a consideration. So you just basically, it's revenue versus the cost of keeping it on the market is what's going to need to be looked at. So again, I suppose related to this previous point, if you are considering retiring the CE mark for a particular product, is that CE mark supporting registration in another jurisdiction? So a lot of companies will utilize the CE mark to gain approval in Australia or Saudi Arabia or Egypt or something like that. So you need to consider what effect your CE mark has on registration in other jurisdictions. And I think a telltale sign of this is the Therapeutic Goods Administration in Australia. They have now started accepting 510Ks, which is one route of approval in the FDA, as supporting registration for a device in Australia. So they're not moving away from the CE mark, but they're offering an alternative, in the potential that there are going to be less products with CE marks out there. Okay, cooperation between regulatory affairs and strategic business planning. We in regulatory affairs like to think we're very important. We are very important, but I think we need to be even more involved in consideration when there is that strategic planning of the business. So which markets are we going to move to next? Are we going to bring a new product on? That can't be a decision that's made without regulatory affairs in the room anymore, because one of the most significant factors in being able to achieve that strategic goal or vision is the regulatory approval element. So, you know, I think it's very important that regulatory is aligned with the strategic planning of business. Okay, I think that's right. That's everything for me on MDR. Brexit we're going to talk about now. I have a really hilarious slide here, so just let me get through it. Fine, there we go. So that, move on to next. So I'm going to talk about three things here. So the status of UK notified bodies. We're going to talk about product leaving the UK market and product entering the UK market. Okay, those are sort of three elements that I suppose there has been some clarification through European Commission documents that have given us some clarity here. We have Jonathan Macmillan from Enterprise Ireland is going to speak as well, so he's going to talk an awful lot about the supports that are available. So this won't be the last you hear about Brexit tonight. We all know now, or we should all know, in a no-deal scenario, the UK notified bodies lose their status. Okay, that's pretty clear. Products which they have certified pre-29th of March, they're okay. Okay, if they're placed on the market, they're okay. So we're not looking at a scenario where products need to be recalled from the market. Okay, thankfully that's not going to happen. And what's very interesting, I think, is the Commission have clarified in one of the documents earlier this month, in the questions and answer document, their idea of placing on the market. It's the transaction between the manufacturer and the customer within an EU 27 country. And they've stated the good doesn't need to physically be placed in that EU country. So if you can prove that the product was sold by, and again, this is the point of view of if you're covered by a British notified body certificate, if you can prove your product was sold while the certificate is still valid, pre-29th March, then that product can continue to be placed on the market after that. So that's a very important point. Products produced after 29th of March that are destined to go on the EU market, they need to be covered by a product certificate issued by an EU 27 notified body. So it means if you have not moved to another notified body, or your British notified body has not done an internal transfer to, you know, an equivalent of theirs in another European country, you can't continue to place products on the market. And this is all predicated on a no-deal scenario, of course. So again, there's a huge element of unknown, but these are the facts that we do know. So it's very important to plan. Continuing this, so where a manufacturer has transferred from a UK notified body, products produced after the transfer need to bear the notified body number of the new notified body. This is a little bit of a break in protocol. We normally have 6 months, you guys normally have 6 months of transition labelling between one notified body to another. The Commission were quite clear in the questions and answers document. It was interesting, but that's what they said. Knocking on from that then, if you transfer, some of you I'm sure have been involved in notified body transfer before, the effect it has on your declaration of conformity. Your notified body certificate is obviously going to be changed because it's going to be issued by a new notified body, or at least the same notified body but with a new number. How does that affect certificates of free sale? And again, back to what I said, is your product registered in other jurisdictions on the back of a CE mark? What are the requirements in Australia, for example, if you were to change notified body? Do you just notify the TGA? Do you have to put in a new submission? You need to consider all of this if you are transferring from a UK notified body to an EU 27 notified body. So we're going to do the questions and answers at the end. Caroline said, with Brexit, it can be very, very specific to individual companies. So we're happy to take specific questions afterwards because a lot can depend on timing here. Okay, if we look at product leaving the UK, so this is a UK manufacturer producing product and it's being shipped out. So no deal scenario, UK is a third country, so you're going to have to deal with customs and tariffs. The UK manufacturer is going to need an authorized representative. The authorized representative is not a new concept. It's a very new concept for UK manufacturers. They've obviously never needed one before. So they need to appoint an authorized rep within a European country. Anecdotally, we know of a lot of authorized reps that have relocated from the UK here to Ireland. Now, as well, the other effect is if you're bringing product in from the UK to an EU 27 country, you could become the de facto importer. Okay, so right now, I might be a distribution company here in Ireland distributing product for a UK manufacturer, whatever that product might be. Overnight, I could become the importer. And there's quite a significant difference in terms of responsibility when you jump from a distributor to an importer. So that's a really, really important consideration for any company that's in that scenario. I put a little asterisk here to just take note of MDR Article 13 is the obligations of an importer. I know right now we're under MDD, but if it is something that you're considering becoming an importer, you need to know that from May 2020, the requirements of Article 13 are going to be on you, and they are quite significant. Then obviously the consideration is, what is the certification status of this product that I'm importing in from outside the union? Is it covered by a UK notified body certificate? Is that still valid? Okay, so these are things you need to consider for product coming out of the UK into the EU 27. Now, reverse that around. I'm an Irish manufacturer. I want to sell product back into the UK. It's, you know, for whatever scenario, that might be a decent market for you. How can you get your product on the market? So the MHRA, which is the UK competent authority, the equivalent of our HPRA, they have put out in writing that they're going to continue to accept the CE mark for a time limited period. They haven't put any time frame on that, but they're going to continue to accept the CE mark. So that's a huge comfort for a lot of companies, because there is a lot of talking around this UKCA conformity assessed, a new UK mark, that right now that is not applying to medical devices. The good old CE mark is going to get you into the UK market. Now, non-UK manufacturers are going to require what's called a responsible person. This is essentially a reverse of the authorised representative. So if you're in Ireland and you're a legal manufacturer in Ireland, you want to sell product to the UK, you need to appoint a responsible person that is a physical entity based within the UK. Now, thankfully, the MHRA have said that that person's details don't need to be reflected on your labelling. So that's a really important point. Your devices need to be registered with the MHRA, excuse me, if they hadn't been already. There's varying grace periods here from 4 months for the highest risk devices, all the way out to 12 months for your low class 1 devices. So this is when you must register your product with the MHRA. Now, if you're an Irish manufacturer with a UK responsible person, it will be the role of the responsible person in the UK to carry out that registration with the MHRA. Okay, so that's all about Brexit, but like I said, we could talk an awful lot about it. If there are specific questions, we're really, really happy to talk about that. We've got members of our Brexit unit from NSAI here as well that can help with any questions. I suppose in wrapping up, it's obvious we're all facing challenges. There's, I think, a little bit of comfort to be taken from the fact that we're all facing them. It's something the entire industry, through the entire supply chain, up notified bodies, competent authorities, European Commission, we're all going through this together. I personally take comfort from that. I don't know if anyone else does. Cooperation and communication, it's hugely, hugely important, because, like I said, I suppose it's the maneuverability of manufacturers and notified bodies. Because of the workload, we can't turn things around as quick as we used to, and we can't react as quick as we used to in terms of that product submission or responses. So it just, everything, we need to have a cushion built in more to the communication that happens between notified bodies and manufacturers. And then to the last point, you need to engage often with your notified body. And if you have a question, contact your notified body. You need to do that. If the question may be silly, that's fine, but we need to hear from you. It's far, far better than the last minute we get a phone call. I've made this change. Should this have come in for approval to you? And we say, yes, it definitely should have. We can't accommodate this for 4 months. We don't know how long it'll take. And all of a sudden you have product that can't get on the market. So you need to just alter that mindset and pick up the phone and call, whether that's us as your notified body, NSAI, whoever it is. You need to hound them, basically. And if it's us, we'll tell you to stop if it's too much, but we would rather hear from you more than hear from you less. It's just avoid surprises for everyone. That's everything from me. So we're going to move on next. Now, like I said, my colleagues are going to get into the heavy detail. I think we have Susan Murphy next. So Susan is our European Operations Manager. She is going to take you through technical documentation requirements under the MDR. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Colin, for that. And you're all very welcome. And now it all gets very interesting. So I'll be making sure that nobody is asleep. So we're going to talk about the MDR, the technical documentation, the requirements of it. Now, who knows the difference between a regulation and a directive? Does anybody know? Yeah? Yeah?
A directive needs to be transposed into the national legislation in each country, whereas regulation doesn't. Mm-hmm. Regulation becomes immediately effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And the easy difference between them is a regulation is a rule, so you have to follow the rules. A directive is a direction, so you can interpret. So the thing to remember is with the regulation, It's the rule. The rules are there. The MDR is quite extensive. I'm sure at this stage you're all having great reading with it. It's an interesting document, and the more you read it, the more differences you find. So we're all in this together, as Colin says. We're looking at the MDR coming in now, the IVDR coming in down the road. So it's a huge time for change. There are huge challenges ahead for everybody across the whole supply chain, not just the notified body or the manufacturer. We're all in the same boat. We all have huge challenges ahead. So what we're going to look at are, in this talk, is just specifically the requirements for the technical documentation. So the technical documentation is the document that you have to submit to the notified body to get your product approved under the MDR. The key point to remember is that an application under the MDR is a new application. It is not a recertification of product already on the market. It's a new application. So you need to have that in your head. So the elements that tell you how to produce your technical documentation are defined in Annex 2 and Annex 3 of the regulation. Section 1 talks about the description. Section 2 is the information, 3 design, 4 general safety, 5 risk benefit, 6 verification validation. Section 7 then is your PMS, which is Annex 3. And then depending on the product, there are specific requirements. You might have a drug device combination, you might have human blood plasma, human or animal tissue, or class 3 or class 2B devices intended to administer or remove a medicinal product from the body. So there are differences, but as I say, it's prescriptive. The rules are there, just follow the rules and you'll know where you go. So as a manufacturer, it's very important. You need to know your audience. Who is your audience? Who are the players? So you're the manufacturer. So what are your roles? And again, they're clearly defined. Article 10 tells you the role of the manufacturer. Annex 1 is your old essential requirements. It's now called the general safety and performance requirements. Article 61 and Annex 14 talk about clinical evaluation. And that's very important. There are huge changes in the clinical, and Yvonne will get onto those for you. Annex 2 and 3 tell you how to compile your technical dossier that you submit to your notified body. Article 19 and 20 talk about the DOC and the CE marking. So finally, there will be no argument with your notified body as to what goes onto your DOC because it's in the regulation. Just follow it. There are a few steps you need to do, and that's it. That eliminates a lot of arguments. Article 27, 29 and 31 talk about the concept of UDI. So anyone who's already manufacturing for the US or those territories, this isn't new, but there are nuances, so you need to be aware of those. Article 83 talks about your post-market surveillance, 87 and 88 about vigilance, and Article 30.1 talks about outsourced processes, which is becoming bigger and bigger in a lot of industries. Then the question is, so you do all this hard work, you have your Annex 2, Annex 3 documentation. What's the notified body looking at? How are we going to assess your application? Okay, we're going to look down through the requirements of Annex 2 and 3, see are they there? But look at Annex 9, that tells you what the notified body is going to look at, both from a QMS and a technical documentation standpoint. So know the audience, know who's there. And then what will the competent authority look at? Again, look at Article 45 and Annex 7. And don't be under any illusion that you will not be getting a lot of visits from the competent authority, because once products are registered under MDR, they already visit us quite a lot, they're very stringent with us. They will be going out to industry to make sure that you are compliant too. So don't be under any illusion. So as I say, know the players. So then the question is, how do you develop your technical documentation? Is it Mary in the corner or Owen in the corner would pick out the design engineer and say, here, we want Annex 2 and 3, go do it. It's not, it has to be a team. You have to involve the entire team throughout the application and the development of your technical documentation. If you just have one person doing it, you're setting yourself up to fail. So you have to define what conformity assessment are you going to follow? What route are you going to take? So you look at Article 52, and that tells you, based on the classification, or how to classify your device. So you go to Article 51 and Annex 8, that tells you, based on the intended use, what your device is, how to classify it. Then you choose your route of conformity. There are 3 routes of conformity. There's Annex 9, 10 and 11, so depending on what route you want to follow. the bulk of the data and the information is in Annex 9. Annex 10 is if you're doing type testing, and Annex 11 just refers you back to Annex 9. So Annex 9 is your go-to place. And then you need to differentiate between Class 2B and Class 2B implantable devices. They are treated very differently. A Class 2B implantable device is treated like a Class 3 device under the MDD. So we'll just briefly go through the different requirements, the different sections. So your device description and specification, that sounds simple. So what is the product or trade name? And we need a general description. You've got to remember that you're familiar with your product, but the person reviewing your product, this is the first time they have seen it. You need to be clear and concise what your product is. Have you got a YouTube video? Send that in. Is there something? If you have a sample, but to send samples to the notified body can be quite expensive. YouTube videos are fantastic because you can see the device and you can see how it works. You need to make sure that the product you submit for registration under the NDR is actually a medical device. It sounds daft, but you'd be surprised at the amount of applications to come into us and they are not actually medical devices. So if you look, you have Article 2, which is in Chapter 1, and it gives you every description that you possibly want, every definition. Read that, and it also tells you what a medical device is. Any definition you need, it's in there, so take it out and read it. You need to look at Article 27 and 28 and Annex 6 in relation to your UDI. We need to know the intended patient population because that will determine what sort of clinical investigations we're looking for. It will drive us down the road. So we need to know who is the intended patient population, what are the indications and what are the warnings. How does your product work? We don't know. You have got to tell us. Again, go to Annex 8 for the classification. It runs down through all the rules. And the main thing, if you're going from MDD to MDR, classification has changed. Products have been up-classified. So you need to be very concise in that. Have you any novel features? We need to know about them, so you need to explain them to us. And if there are various configurations, again, tell the notified body. We need to know the key functional elements. How does it might be a multifaceted device. What are the key elements? How do they work together? And a description of the raw materials incorporated into the functional elements. So particularly those who would have direct or indirect contact. So that is new, and it's something you have to go back and look at where you're getting your raw materials, who's producing them, what additives are there or not there. We need an overview of previous generations of the device and also an overview of similar devices. So as I say, it's very prescriptive. You follow down each one, tick them off, and there you go. Labelling then is in section 2. So what do you need? Well, we will require a complete set of labelling. And by that, we mean labelling for all levels of your device. We need to ensure that all the requirements within the GSPR pertaining to labelling have been addressed by the manufacturer. So we need to see that. We only request that the labelling is provided to us in English because we will look at that and then we will order your process for translation while we're on site. The two standards that are current there at the moment, 1041 and 15223, and you will all be familiar with those. The design and manufacturing information then. So what exactly do we need there? So we need a description of each design change, not just the overall. You have to go into each specific design stage. The information on specifications, the manufacturing processes and their validations. It is not sufficient to provide the notified body with a protocol. We'll throw it back at you. We need to see the validation. The protocol should tell us how you do it. The validation is the result, and that's what we need to see. We need to see continuous monitoring and the final testing of your devices. And as more and more manufacturers are outsourcing now, we need details of all suppliers and subcontractors where design, manufacturing, assembly or sterilisation is carried out. We will elect to audit those. If they're audited with another notified body, we may take those audits, but we reserve the right to audit all those. If you have a high-risk device, a Class 2B implantable or a Class 3, we will only accept it if all the sites, all the associated sites are registered with NSAI. So the general safety and performance requirements, the old essential requirements, again, it's the ones that are relevant to your device. There shall be a justification for why it's relevant to you. We want to see the validation and the verification of the solutions adopted to demonstrate compliance with that requirement. We need an explanation. It may not everything is going to apply to your device, but we're not going to make an assumption. If you don't tell us it's not applicable, we're going to tell you there's a gap in your documentation. So if it's not applicable, you need to tell us why it's not applicable, and you need to rationalize why it's not applicable. You need to demonstrate the method, how you comply with the essential or the general safety requirements. You need to identify the harmonized standards and the common specifications that you have applied, together with the date of issue, because we will be looking for the most up-to-date version that you're in compliance with. And then we want you to document the identity of the document demonstrating conformance with those, and that has to be traceable to a location. And when we come on site to audit, the auditor will have that information, and they will go and say, okay, Mary, I want to see this document. And you say, where'd they get that from? It was in your tech file. So we want to make sure it is there. So section 5 talks about the benefit and the risk management. So there's nothing new here. Everybody is familiar with 14971, the risk management standard. Everyone should be aware that risk is a continuous process. It's not just something you start and then it goes away until you recertify. It's a continuous process. We expect it to be updated. It shall contain information on how you designed and manufactured the product to demonstrate it is safe and effective. You have to take into account the GSPOs in Annex 1, and you have to ensure that all foreseeable risks can be minimised and weighed against the benefit. The whole idea is to minimise the risk and mitigate the risk as much as possible, because at the end of the day, we only want safe products on the market. So section 6 then talks about the product verification and validation. So the results and the critical analysis of all verification and validation tests will be required and will be reviewed by the team in the notified body. And just an important thing, because a lot of manufacturers get confused, there can often be misunderstanding. So verification is the question you ask, are you building the product right? So that is the verification. The validation then is, are you building the right product? So the nuance are there, but people can often make the mistakes. So preclinical and clinical data in section 6.1. So the preclinical data, we would often talk about that as the engineering, the design elements of it. So we're talking about your engineering, your laboratory, your animal testing, whatever simulated testing you did, and an evaluation of published literature applicable to your device. So whereby it's your device, there's going to be similar devices out on the market. So what's happening? What is the market history for those devices? What are the vigilance issues for those devices, and how can you mitigate those for your device? We will look for detailed information on how you do your test design, your test studies, or your protocols, your methods of data analysis, again, the biocompatibility that Colin referred to, the physical, chemical, and microbiological characteristics, electrical safety, software, depending on what the type of product you have, different requirements will be applicable. The stability, and we're not only looking at stability of the product, we also need to look at the stability of the packaging. People tend to give you one and not the other. The two have to go hand in hand, particularly if it's a sterile device, that packaging has to remain stable until the end of shelf life. We're looking at the performance and safety of your device. Where you have not carried out any new testing, and this is very important, you need to provide a rationale, because we're not going to make any assumptions. So why didn't you do new testing? What's the story? Give us the story. The clinical evaluation plan report and updates. Again, look at Article 61 and Annex 14 and the PMCF plan and report, which are identified in Part B of Annex 14. Or if you're not doing it, why not? We need a justification. Don't leave anything to chance. So then if we look into Annex 3, Annex 3 is your post-market surveillance. Everybody should be aware of post-market surveillance. You should all be doing it. If you look, so if you look here, your medical device, your life cycle, your conception and design, your manufacture, your packaging and labeling, that is your pre-market. On the market then is advertising and sales, and post-market, it's when it's in use and how you dispose of it. So it's a life cycle. So you need to provide that information. It's defined in Article 83 to 86. We want it, there's no point, now, one of the problems the manufacturers make is they just give us a data dump and they think we're going to sort through it. Well, the answer is no, we're not. If you give us a data dump, we'll give it back to you and ask you to sort it out. The PMS must be clear, organised, searchable and unambiguous. Make it as simple. Again, look at the different articles from 83 up to 86. And the PSUR, which is your Periodic Safety Update Report, there are different requirements based on the classification of your device. So Class 2B and 3, it has to be provided annually and will be uploaded electronically in line with Article 92. This is reviewed by the notified body, will be commented upon by the notified body, and then Class 2A, it's every 2 years. So you've done all this, you've made your application, you've met all the requirements of Annex 2 and Annex 3. So what are the notified body going to do? Look at Annex 9. We're going to examine the application. If we feel the application is not up to scratch, we may require additional testing, and we'll go back to you and say you missed this test, that test. We will ask that. We will examine the clinical evidence, any claims of equivalence, and assess the suitability of using such data, taking into account factors such as new instructions or innovations. Yvonne will talk more about equivalence under the MDR. It's a very different animal to equivalence under the MDD. You must verify that the clinical evidence and clinical evaluation are adequate. So that is what we will verify, that they are adequate. And we will also verify the conclusions that you draw in relation to conformity with the GSPR, the adequacy of the risk-benefit analysis and conclusion, your labelling, your user training, and that is a very important element. How you train, so you have this high-risk device, how do you train the end user in it? We want to see how you do that. We want documentation on that, your PMS plan and your PMCF plan proposed where applicable. We will provide, so at the end of this, when it's all complete, the notified body will provide the manufacturer with a report of the technical documentation assessment. So you will get, at the end of this, you will get a report. You may need that for other registries, whatever. You will get a clinical evaluation assessment report and a technical documentation assessment certificate. So you'll get a minimum of 3 things from the notified body. And the important thing to remember is if you make any changes to the approved device that has been approved by the notified body, it requires notified body approval. So you cannot come and say, oh, well, we have our QMS with you, so we're making changes. That does not work. All changes, all significant changes have got to come through the notified body. And again, we will be assessing your process for substantial changes on site at the QMS. And then there are different requirements. If you go again to Annex 2, Section 6.1, depending on the device, Class 3, Class 2B, if it's animal tissue, if it's a drug device combination, whatever, there are specific requirements in addition to the requirements that we have just talked about. This information will be available on the slides on the website. So now I'd like to thank you all for that and wish you all the best of luck. I will now pass you over to Tom.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to speak to you this evening on the MDR and in relation to quality system requirements. So first up, these are the timelines that we're dealing with at the moment. So it's quite nice that we're here on the 27th of February, so we can have ISO 1345-2003 for one more day, and then it's no longer with us. So hopefully everyone here is either moving to or has moved to 1345-2016, and that will be a good basis for moving to the MDR, which is coming into, it's about halfway through the 3-year transitional period. So it should be, it will be up and running at the end of May 2020. And then lastly, we have the IVDR 2 years later in May 2022. So the key changes under 1345-2016, I'm not going to go through all of these. The slides will be available, but mainly I'm sure everyone is familiar with the risk-based approach that's mentioned throughout 13485. That is going to carry on through, and it will be a very good basis for your MDR, but it's not limited to risk. There's big changes to software. You've got ISO 62306 and ISO 80002-2, and then the complaint handling is also a very important part under 13485. Again, the other issues, the other ones to note are the relationship agreements. They're quite important, and your tech file that Susan went through previously. So again, what I mentioned earlier, your risk-based approach is your foundation for everything else, not just for your MDR, your IVDR, but also for MedSAP. So it's a very good starting point if you are planning on going to either of the three. So this slide will show you how your MDR could cascade through your QMS. So if you look for your design and manufacture and documentation, you should have your general obligation of the manufacturer somewhere in those documents. That will bring you on to your general safety performance requirements. So that takes into the life cycle of your device and your risk management system. So within that, you should have all the GSPRs that are pertinent to your device listed there. Again, this will come down to your tech file. So Annex 2 and Annex 3 should have your tech file, and you should have all your post-market continued follow-ups. So again, that will bring you finally to your declaration of conformity in Annex 4, where you should have your 10 points listed as per that annex. Let's see. So how well integrated is your risk management? How well integrated is your risk management system? So on this one, so potentially you could have a lot of this already done from your 13485 upgrade. The classification of your device is based on risk. Risk will follow through your complaints, post-market, supplier management, incoming inspection, right through the continuous evaluation of your suppliers, and the safety performance requirements versus your essential requirements, and again your MedDev 2.7.1 Rev 4, labeling standards, full product life cycle, right through to decommissioning, and your software, electrical, medical equipment. All of these steps, risk should be monitored continuously throughout them. The next two slides are going to be where in the MDR are your QMS requirements called out. So specifically Chapter 2, Article 10, Section 9, that's where you're going to find them. On the left-hand side of this slide, as you look at it, and this is potentially something you could use where you could list your Article 10 QMS requirements. Then your next column is your ISO 13485, the particular sections of that. And then the last blank box is where you could have your own internal policy documents where you can line the three of them up and say, this is our document, and it captures everything in 13485, and it captures the requirements of the MDR as well. More specifically, if you move on to the Annex 9 part, the conformity assessment based on the QMS technical documentation. Again, these slides are available, so it's probably a bit small to pick out from back there. Again, the same principle applies. You can line things up quite nicely, and then you know what you're missing and you know what you have. So these are the requirements from the MDR that we have to do. So Annex 7 is basically QMS, like Section 4.5.2, QMS auditing by the NB. This is what we're going to be looking for. And the technical documentation, QMS and product verification. And the Annex 7, and these are the Annex 7 requirements that we have to do. So if you think of it from our perspective, or from your perspective in relation to us, you know that we have to do these, so it gives you a good indication of what we will be looking for. So your organizational general requirements, quality management requirements, your resources, process requirements, and again, unannounced audits must be performed. So you have a fair idea of what we're going to be looking for based on what we have to do. So yeah, so the MDR QMS requirements. So Annex 7 is used to build your internal audit criteria, but your internal audits should cover the processes of your company. So if you combine those two, you can get a quite nice feel for what we're going to be looking for. And so an example of the content that Annex 7 has. So we must address design and development, but if your company doesn't do design or development, you can ignore that straight away. The opposite side of it is, if you do it, we're going to be looking for it. And the production and process controls, product documentation, purchasing controls, verification of purchase devices, corrective and preventive actions, and post-market surveillance. Again, that these are things we're going to be looking for. So if they're included in your internal audit criteria, you're already halfway there to ticking a lot of the boxes. Again, it's important to note any changes or modifications that will be looked at, and surveillance and post-cert monitoring will also be looked at. So again, this list does not cover all the requirements, it covers some of them. So Annex 1, Chapter 1, again, it's all risk management, risk. From 13485, it'll follow right through to your MDR. And then Annex 9, Chapter 1, this is your clinical evaluation plan. It's slightly different to your clinical evaluation report. Both are needed, but the plan needs to be kept up to date and continually kept up to date. And then 2.2 Part B, End and 4, the draft mandate for the designation of the authorised rep. Colin talked about this earlier. It's important to know, particularly with the Brexit side of things, where or when you need to appoint that. So this slide is, it's quite a nice like map of what you can do. So your gap analysis to the MDR, that's probably where you're going to start. And the slides I showed you earlier where you line up your MDR versus 13485 versus what you currently have is one way that that could be done. It's important to note that the class 3s are particularly important for your gap analysis. Again, your internal audits, if you have a full round of internal audits for 13485 2016 done, that is a good start, but you could also bring that one further and do an internal audit for your MDR. You could combine those two and do them together, or you could just incorporate the MDR 27, the MDR audit, internal audit into your internal audits. And then finally, certification audit by the notified body. So again, we have to be certified before we can get around to doing that. But so MDR compliance strategy. So from this one, when does your current cert expire? What is the transition plan to the notified body? Does the notified body have the designation and capacity to accommodate you? Again, do you have your clinical data ready? And do you have enough resources with the competency to bring your plan the whole way through? Two other things to note as well, UDIMED and your UDIDIs. So with UDIMED, this is the rollout is planned for March 2020 and will be followed by an update in December 2020. Again, you will need the UDI-DI or the UDI-PI depending on which way you're going to go with it and the overall thoughts. So your strategy, Colin spoke about this earlier, if you decide to go early or you decide to go late, there's the two tracks are there. Both have pros and cons, but again, clinical data is going to be the driver of this decision. And then the things to consider, there's PMS requirements are going to be in from the 26th of May 2020, regardless of whether you decide to go early or go late. And then again, the registration of the economic operators also comes into effect then. And then lastly, what is the current certificate expiry that you have? That is ultimately the main one that's going to drive. And the current state of play. So as it stands, there's 58 NBs for the MDD, 22 for the IBD, and 13 for the AIMD. And Colin mentioned earlier, there's only one current MDR notified body. So thank you.
Hi everyone. So I'm just going to talk about, my name is Yvonne Defo, and I'm just going to talk about the clinical requirements for the MDR. As you all know, there's great emphasis on clinical requirements in the MDR versus the MDD. I mean, we were looking at clinical requirements for the MDD, but you know, with the MDR, there's a lot of focus on clinical requirements. So I say almost everything I'm going to say today is very important. So I'd start with this quote, the secret of getting ahead is getting started. So, you know, because this is a period of change for medical devices, it's very important that we, you know, we have a head start and we already get our acts together because, you know, anytime there's change, you always need to be prepared in different ways. So I suppose as we're all here, we've already given ourselves a head start. So that's a good thing. So these are the topics I'd like to touch on today. And I'll start with clinical evaluation. So clinical evaluation is, this is the definition of, so what is clinical evaluation? It's a systematic and planned process for continuously collect, generate, analyze, and access clinical data pertaining to your device. So this is basically saying that, you know, you have to go and keep proactively seeking for any data related to your device or even data, you know, related to equivalent devices that are like your device. So it's a proactive process and it's continuous. And you have to get this data. Why do you get it? Because you need to verify the safety and performance of your device, and you have to, you know that you have adequate clinical evidence to support the safety and performance of your device. So why do we perform clinical evaluation? We do this because it's necessary for us to be able to demonstrate the general safety and performance requirements, which is currently the MDD essential requirements. So without a clinical evaluation, you can't say that you conform with the GSPR. So Article 61 describes the necessary requirements for performing clinical evaluation, and also Annex 14 also talks about that. So once you've collected the data and you have all the clinical evidence related to your device, then you have to put them all together in what we call the CER, which is a clinical evaluation report. And this is where I come in, and these are the things that this is a document that I would be looking at regarding your device, and I should be able to get that after I complete my review of the CER and all the supporting documents. My conclusions should align with yours. So the CER is part of technical documentation. So, you know, Susan talked about technical documentation. You don't submit, your technical file is incomplete without a CER. So clinical evaluation can be based on the following. You know, you have to perform a critical evaluation of scientific literature. So like I said earlier, you have to search the literature, and you have to find out every information on safety and performance of your device, on the design of your device, intended use, and you should base it on the following conditions that, you know, you're looking at this information related to a device that's equivalent to yours. And also that the data you have gotten adequately demonstrates that you're in compliance with the GSPR. Also, you can base your clinical evaluation on clinical investigation. So that's you going out to perform a clinical trial regarding your device in order to prove to us that your device, the safety and performance of your device, you can prove to us that you have data related to the safety and performance of your device, and it performs as intended under normal conditions of use. And you can also currently search for other alternative treatments that would be, you know, similar to your device if they are available. Obviously, if it's a novel device, it means that they're not alternative. Then there's no device like yours. So so as I said earlier, you know, you have to keep proactively looking for any data related to your device. It's a continuous process, clinical evaluation, and you have to keep documenting every clinical evidence you have on your device throughout the life cycle of the device. And you would also include your PMS data, which is your post-market surveillance data. So how your device is performing in the clinical setting, would also like that to be included in your CER, and also information on your PMCF, which is post-market clinical follow-up. So I'll just talk about equivalence. So for the manufacturers that choose to perform clinical evaluation based on equivalence, these are the things you have to know. So you have to perform, you can only demonstrate equivalence if you apply all the 3 pillars of equivalence and you fulfill them. So the 3 pillars of equivalence are clinical, biological, and technical characteristics. So you have to ensure that your device and the predicate device have the same clinical characteristic, technical characteristic, and biological characteristics. You know, you can't claim equivalence to all devices, meaning that you can't say you have one device, a predicate device, which has similar clinical and technical characteristics, and another device which shares the biological characteristics. So it has to be claimed to a single device as a predicate device, which is your device. So just with regards to clinical, so it has to be the same clinical condition that you're treating. So the same pathology, the same, intended purpose, the same site in the body, similar population. So if it's for the pediatric populations, you're going to use it for kids, it should be, the predicate device should also be used for kids, similar severity of disease, you know, and so everything should be similar from a clinical perspective and the same. From a technical perspective, you should ensure that your device and the predicate device have similar design, same condition of use, similar specs and properties, similar surface characteristics. So if you're using a specific coating, the predicate device should use the same coating. So there should be no difference in the surface characteristics. And if it's a software, it should be the same software algorithm and the same deployment technique. So in a case where you have a stent as your device, the predicate device should have the same deployment technique as your own stent. And then from biological point of view, you should ensure that the device is in contact with the same tissue or the same body fluids, you know, at the same anatomical site as well. The same duration of contact. So if your device is an implantable device, it should have the same, or if it's a transient use device, it should have the same duration of contact as the predicate device. So as I said, there should be no clinical significant difference between in the safety and performance of your device and the predicate device. So this is just a flow chart on if you choose to claim equivalence, and there are a couple of exceptions there. So if you're a manufacturer for, where's the pointer? Okay. So if you're a manufacturer for an implantable device or a class 3 device, these are the questions you have to ask yourself. So, you know, by default, it's expected that every implantable or class 3 device have to perform, you know, a clinical investigation. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. So you have to ask yourself, does your device fall under these exceptions under Article 61 of the MDR? So if it does, which are just four things here. So you have to ask, is your device equivalent aspect and exporting, which is clinically, biologically and technically, and has it been endorsed by a notified body? So it's not only do you think that it is equivalent, the notified body has to endorse that equivalence claim. And then if you answer yes to that, you have to ask if you have, because it's expected as per the MDR that you and the manufacturer of the predicate device will have a contract. So you have to ensure that you have a contract, and not just any contract. You have to ensure that the contract states that you and the predicate manufacturer would have ongoing access to their technical documentation. So I think that's going to be a very difficult hurdle for a lot of manufacturers. And also you have to ask if the original clinical evaluation has been performed in compliance with the requirement of the MDR. And if you say yes to all these three, then you have to be able to provide all this evidence to the notified body for review. So we talk about clinical investigation, and you know, why do we perform a clinical investigation? We do that to ensure that, you know, under normal conditions of use, your claims to that device is safe and it's the same as the intended use. You know, so if you perform a clinical investigation, you know, you collect your subjects for the investigation, you should be able to show that when you use that device as intended, as you, the manufacturer, have claimed that it should be used, you know, it should perform as you expect it to perform. So also perform a clinical investigation to ensure that, you know, to see the clinical benefits of the device, and also to verify the safety and performance. So you should always know that if you're performing an investigation, that the benefits should always outweigh the risk. So, as I said, by default, you'd expect that, you know, for class 3 devices and implantable devices, you should perform a clinical investigation unless they fall under the exception of Article 61. And also the MDR really calls out the ISO 14155 standard, which is the standard for clinical investigation. So, you know, if you're familiar with that standard, you can, you know, you should perform your clinical investigation as per the standard, that it aligns with the Declaration of Helsinki on the ethical principles of how to treat human subjects. And you should note that your clinical investigation will be reported in EUDAMED, which is the European Medical Device Portal. So this is also another flowchart with regards to class 3 and implantable devices, where if you have performed a significant change, you have to ask yourself the following question, you know, with regards to those classes of device. So does it fall under the exception of Article 61? If it's a no, then you have to perform a clinical investigation. If it's a yes, you have to ask yourself this question. So you've performed a significant change. You have to ask, is the modified device equivalent to the marketed device as per the 3 pillars of equivalence? Is the clinical evaluation of the marketed device enough to demonstrate conformity of the modified device with the GSPR? And then you should ask, if you answer yes to this 3, then you have to ask yourself if you have an appropriate post-market clinical follow-up plan that includes post-market studies to demonstrate safety and performance. So this is just saying that if you have performed the change and you're not claiming equivalence, you have to perform clinical investigation. But if you do tick the 3 boxes there, you have to ensure that you're doing a post-market clinical follow-up. And then, this flowchart just talks about, a lot of manufacturers are wondering, if you have a class 3 implantable device, would you, and you've placed it under the MDD, so devices that are currently in the market, would you perform a clinical investigation? So you have to ask yourself this question again, does it fall under the exceptions of Article 61? If it's no, then you might have to perform a clinical investigation. If it's a yes, you have to ask, is the clinical evaluation on sufficient clinical data? Now, we don't have a guidance document on what sufficient clinical data is yet. I know that it's being drafted at the moment, and the Commission might release that, but at the moment for us, from our point of view, sufficient clinical data is, we're using the MedDev 2.7.1 Rev 4, and that's what we would regard, as sufficient clinical data. So what the MedDev has instructed there, until we get a guidance, that's what we will be using. And then you have to ask yourself if it's in compliance with the relevant common spec, or if there is a common spec at that time. And if it's yes, then you may not need to perform a clinical investigation. And then there are a couple of devices now, when you compare to the MDD in the MDR, that may not need, these are implantable devices that may not need a clinical investigation because they're already well established. So these are sutures, staples, dental fillings, crowns, they're all implantable, but with no need for clinical investigation. Okay, so I think I've said that already. So once you perform you should ensure that while performing a clinical investigation, that it should be able to, inform us of the intended purpose of the device, the clinical benefits, the performance, and the safety of the device. And all this information would be put in what we call a clinical investigation report, and should ensure that it's signed by the principal investigators and all the investigators involved. So it's good to note that, all the investigations that are currently being done under the MDD that you started prior to May 2020, you can continue as you're doing them now. But after May 2020, the reporting of serious adverse events and device deficiencies will be as per the MDR. So just a brief word on the role of the manufacturer in clinical evaluation. So it's the manufacturer's role to give us enough evidence that they conform with the general safety and performance requirements. And that's the reason why you have to, one of the reasons why you have to perform a clinical evaluation as per Article 61. And you should keep continuously looking and searching the data and every evidence, clinical evidence you can get regarding the safety and performance of the device. So it's just good to know, if you're a manufacturer of a class 3 implantable device and a class 2 active device intended to administer medicinal substance, you have to know that you have the benefit of consulting an expert panel. You can, which is at the, from the commission level, and you can send your clinical development plan to them. They can look at it and they can tell you what they think. So this is actually a good thing and a good opportunity to use when if you fall under this class as a manufacturer. You can send your clinical development plan, or you can send your strategy to them, or you can even send your clinical investigation plan to them, and they can review that and give you their own opinion. And I think it's a good thing. But if you do that, you have to ensure that you put the information in the clinical evaluation report, even if it's a negative decision that the expert panels have made, we would have to see that in the clinical evaluation report. And you should also note that whatever decision that was made by the expert panel for that review does not is not going to apply to subsequent reviews. So these are the must-have documents for clinical evaluation under the MDR. You should have a clinical evaluation plan. So that's all seen in Annex 14. And, these are the things that should be included in the plan. In the plan, you should also have what you call a clinical development plan. You should also have a CER, as I've already spoken about that. You should have an SSCP. So SSCPs would be for only implantable and class 3 devices. So if you have a lower class device, you would not need an SSCP. So it's just a document which includes information which would be very clear to the patient and also the physician about your device. And it's all about transparency with the MDR, as you know. So all your SSCP will be uploaded on Udemy and available to the public. So you'd also need, if you're performing a clinical investigation, you'd need a CIP, investigator's brochure, and a clinical investigation report. And as I keep saying, you have to search the literature, you have to perform a literature search, provide a protocol and a report regarding your device. So you need a PMS plan as well. So that's a post-market surveillance plan. So we'd need to see that how you tend to follow your device and how you intend to follow the device when it's in the market. So that's what we need to see. And in your post-market surveillance plan, we need to see what your PMCF plan, which is your post-market. And that's that. And we'll also need to see your PMCF report, evaluation report. So this includes all the findings of your post-market clinical follow-up. So your post-market clinical follow-up can come in form of a post-market study, which is like a clinical investigation. It could come in form of a registry where you're collecting data regarding the use of your device in a clinical environment, or it could also come in form of a survey. So it depends on what class your device is. And all the information will be included here. And you would be looking out for, PSER, which is a periodic safety update report, which, for manufacturers of class 2A, class 2B, and class 3 devices, they have to prepare a PSER. And this is part of your technical file. So your PSER would also be made available on Udemy. As I said earlier, Udemy is going to be public, open to the public, and they'll be able to review information regarding your device and how your device is performing. So the complaints and any issues, or even how the device has helped people as well. So that's just talking about the role of notified body in a clinical evaluation. So in summary, what I have to say is from a clinical point of view, so what I would be looking at when I'm looking at your device and the clinical data is, I'd be looking at what you have stated your intended use to be. I'd be looking at traceability of your intended use across all the other documents. So I have to see that your intended use in your clinical evaluation report and your risk management document and your IFU are actually aligning with each other. I'd be looking at your literature search. I'd look at your clinical investigation data, your post-market surveillance data, PMCF, and how you plan your clinical evaluation. And the reason why we do this is to ensure that all the evidence you've provided to us actually shows that your device conforms with the general safety and performance requirements. And then we will provide, as the clinical reviewers, we're going to prepare what we call the clinical evaluation assessment report, called the CER, and we will have to give that to you to give you an impression of what our review was like. So just a few words on devices with no intended medical purpose. This is something new with the MDR. So most of these devices, as you've seen listed, really do not have, most of them are cosmetic devices. So with the MDR now, we will be looking at them and they would be regulated. And, things like colorful contact lenses, which are non-prescriptive, liposuction devices, deep brain stimulation devices, these are the devices that we'll have to look on. The reason why we have to look at them is to see that you have good safety data, and we're going to look at the post-market surveillance data, PMCF data, and in some cases, some of them might need clinical investigation now. So just something about the expert panel consultation process. As I said, high-risk devices, I think Susan mentioned that from the MDR, implantable devices are now regarded as almost, well, class 3 devices because they are high-risk devices now, and we'll be looking at class 2B devices. So if you're a manufacturer of this classes of devices, we will be sending your data based on if they fall under the requirements of data that have to be sent to the expert panel. So these are class 2B active devices that are intended to administer or move medicinal products. And the expert panel would look at the CER, which is our report of your device or clinical review of your device. They're going to look at the benefit risk determination. They're going to look at the consistency of clinical evidence, when put across, when aligning with your intended use, and they're going to look at your PMCF plan. On that, they would form an opinion. So this is how it goes. If we send these documents to them, to the commission, who would send it to the expert panel, it could take 21 days for the expert panel to decide if they want to give a scientific opinion or not. So we have to give them that time. Within 21 days, they could tell us, well, we don't want to comment or we want to comment. But if they decide to comment or give any opinion, we have to give them 60 days for them to provide their own scientific opinion. So you wouldn't need an expert panel if your device falls under both classes, if it's a device recertification or if it's a significant change application, or where there are common specifications related to your device, then you wouldn't need an expert panel consultation. So this is just this is a list of the relevant articles and chapters where it's just you can go to and help yourself and get more information on your clinical evaluation, SSCPs, post-market clinical follow-up, and clinical investigation. So this is where I'm going to leave the presentation, and I hope you were able to get a lot from it. And I will call on Jonathan from Enterprise Ireland to come and give us talk. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Evening, everybody. My name is Jonathan McMillan, and I work with Enterprise Ireland on the Brexit team. Thank you very much to our partners here in NSAI for the opportunity to come along. I'm only going to run through a couple of slides, really, just to give you a quick update in terms of what we have seen in terms of working with companies. Really looking back, I suppose, back to June the 23rd, 2016, and as what we've heard basically from companies in terms of their areas of risk and preparedness. Before I click through the slides, maybe it's just a quick, sorry for embarrassing anybody, but a quick show of hands if you're here tonight specifically on the Brexit agenda. So if you're concerned that your business has a concern around an immediate effect around Brexit, maybe just put your hand up, yeah? Okay. Those who didn't put their hands up, I'll just put down as being shy as well, maybe. But as we kind of, my job is pretty much full-time now, out talking to companies, and these are the common questions I get asked every day, really, and our team do. So it's what are companies doing out there? So we're here tonight learning about the regulatory side of things, but what other issues are companies doing? We're often challenged. We did a survey, when was it? Back in October time, and a lot of our companies that we work with as Enterprise Ireland said they're taking Brexit prepared actions, over 80% of them. So what are those actions? We'll talk a bit about that. What supports, we get often asked, what supports are available to companies, like practical financial support. So I have a slide on that. And then Brexit is full of sound bites and cliches. One of the most common is this idea of plan for the worst and hope for the best is the most commonly used one, but no regrets planning is one. So I'll finish off just and say what that means. So in terms of practical steps, a little deeper in this. The matrix on the right hand side of the screen, or as you look at it, sorry, the left. So from talking to you as companies over the last number of weeks and months, these are the 9 big areas that companies are really concerned about. Yeah, so I'll just give you a couple of seconds to look at them and think, are those the areas that are maybe causing some sleepless nights in your business? Obviously, the regulation and standards one is that we're focusing on tonight. The presentations and NSAI are the experts within that for your industry group, certainly. I think from us out talking to our companies, and our companies range from startups right to the largest food manufacturers and engineering firms in the country. Customs and logistics is really something that is concerning companies. Certainly in my lifetime or my business lifetime, we haven't really had to deal with customs procedures for most of the business that we've been doing, obviously within Europe and within the UK. So just on that customs piece, give you the one or two things that you need to really consider. One is to look at the type of goods that are both coming into your business and the type of goods that are going out. Not just the type of them, but also is there tariff implications and the volume of those. So have a look at that, and also what comes over the land bridge. Those are the key things. Revenue, you may have received a letter. We all receive letters from Revenue now and again, but you may have received a customs letter from Revenue Friday week ago. I won't ask for a show of hands on that one, saying that there's some basic steps that 70,000 companies like yourselves receive that letter. So the first thing I've been asked to stress from their Revenue Customs guys is a registration number, of EORI number, that you all should get on and just do the simple registration on. So the numbers are increasing in that, but any company that is trading with a third country, so if the UK crashes out or goes out of the EU come the 29th of March, that is something that you all have to have done. The sourcing, I think, is probably a second one. So that's what we're talking a lot about that this evening. And again, the advice, the key couple of questions that you need to ask are similar to what you heard earlier, but is really having a close look at your key strategic products coming into your company. So they may be, it might be, we call them our strategic sourcing products, and there's nice matrices you can do around that. But what are those key things? It might be chemicals, it might be cleaning products, things that you will really mean that the lights will not just dim, but go out within a number of weeks. And which of those come from the UK? It's as simple as that. And then pick up the phone or go over and have a really close engagement with those suppliers in the UK and do what they have been doing to us as customers of ours, to a lot of our companies, is asking those hard questions like, what contingencies have you put in place? Have you taken stock holding increases? Have you engaged in the customs procedures or simplifications? And are you taking a new relationship out in Eurozone? So ask those questions and challenge them. And only then, if you're not happy with that, then you might look at secondary suppliers or alternative suppliers. But certainly, I think that's the worst case scenario in this. Do the other things first. Yeah, I'm not going to run through them all. There was good news in the legislation that's going up for debate yesterday and today around the VAT at the point of entry. I'm sure you've already heard that was to be at the point of entry, but that's being now kept the status quo, so it'll be deferred till your next accounting period of the VAT, so a couple of months out. So those are things. Obviously, currency for a lot of our businesses is the most immediate effect and the most immediate. So we are expecting over the next 30 days, 29 days, increasing and again volatility in the markets in terms of sterling and euro. So we've just put up actually on our website, Prepare for Brexit, this one here, a very simple article on the managing currency and managing financial risk. So it's again 3 or 4 really key steps for you as a business. You guys are all very developed businesses, I know, and very sophisticated. So I'm sure your finance functions will have that. But if you don't and you want it, then there's some good advice. So those are the areas of risk, and we have a very simple scorecard that's up on our website that if you want to re-look at these issues again and think, have I missed out anything else from what I'm hearing tonight around regulatory? Is there other things that you want to go in and have a look at? I won't name names, but as I said, some of our largest food companies in the country have recently just started using this, and they have a Brexit committee, but they're using some of these things just to really reassure themselves that they're addressing that. And even some of our, might be some IDA companies here today, some of our multinationals who have come in we're engaging with around these things. Any questions? No? All right. So what supports are available to companies? So I'm going to talk about two things. Companies are looking for some advice in this area, and then some financial support. So very quickly, one thing Brexit has caused in this country has been agencies like ourselves, NSAI, Intertrade Ireland, the local enterprise offices, whoever you engage with, is really for us to work well together. Not that we weren't before, but we are now really engaging together and coming up with some fantastic supports to help you as businesses. And there's some of them. I'm not going to bore you now by going through everything. Those areas I mentioned, supply chain, financial currency management, and the customs procedures, there are supports up there. There's supports online. So if you want us to go or get some of your staff to go on to customs, there's a course, lasts 30 minutes, lovely animations around what customs means. There's webinars recorded up on the website on strategic sourcing that you can go in and listen to some slides. If you want to drop it down a level, there's telephone helplines that you can phone up and get speaking to an expert in those areas. And finally, I think ourselves and the local enterprises and Intertrade, what we realize is that most of you want to speak to an expert. So you don't necessarily want to speak to Jonathan in this, but you'd like to speak to, do you have an expert in financial currency management or customs that you can refer us to? And all of our different offers, they're all up on our Prepare for Brexit website. That's what we'd like to do as quickly as possible. Do you know, like, there is no excuse for any of you in your businesses not to get proper expert advice in these areas now. Is that tough enough talk? On the financial side, I'll get tougher here as I go along. On the financial side, the government have invested 300 million into a Brexit loan scheme. Anybody, what else that question? Everybody know about this? No? Some people know about it? So it's been administered through the banks. So there's loan schemes there. There's been about 300 or 400 companies now who have there's a couple of phases to it. They've got the initial eligibility, and I think of the 300 million, there is about 17 million that has been drawn down. So there's lots of money left in it. So it's a loan scheme. All the things you heard tonight about maybe taking on extra staff or looking at extra procedures or extra regulatory or moving to a new notified body or whatever it may well be, all costs money. So if you want to move that cost just from this year over a case of 3 or 4 years, you can get a loan which is capped at 4% maximum, and you can spread that expenditure over those 3 or 4 years. For those of you who are maybe smaller businesses, the attraction in the loan scheme is that you can have unsecured loans up to $500,000, so you don't need to put security against that, which most of the other lending structures require security against. And again, I'm not going to go through all of these, but ourselves, Intertrade, and the local enterprise offices all have various levels of grant support that you can avail of. One of our fastest selling supports is the Act On, where if you're an Enterprise Ireland connected company, I know there's some of you here tonight, then we will give you that. Here's the beauty in it, no paperwork, no application process. We simply have a conversation and we give you an expert to work on it. And Intertrade Start to Plan vouchers is basically the same. You can get a few, up to 5,000 now from tomorrow in terms of linking you with experts on it. Very finally, thank you very much for your giving me a few minutes. The no regret planning. So our phrase in this is, there's one thing in all of this uncertainty of Brexit that you can be absolutely sure of. Wait for it. And that is whatever this post-Brexit world is going to look like. Okay, so whether it is a extension or a transition or a Canada plus or whatever it looks like, the one thing we can be absolutely sure that as businesses, you're going to have to continue to be more innovative and certainly more competitive and definitely more diversified in your markets. So that's why the likes of ourselves in EI and the local enterprise offices are really spending as much time working with yourselves in terms of helping you on the innovation, the competitiveness and the diversification agendas that we can get you through the next number of months and all of these other prepare for Brexit agendas. But in terms of that medium, longer term view, what we really want is for all of us not to take our eye off the really important strategic pieces of it. And my final slide is just really, I'm here this evening, be delighted to talk to anybody afterwards or come and grab us. And please, if you want to note down our websites there and our contact details, and we would be absolutely delighted to engage with any of you. Thank you so much for listening.
Now, so I'm going to invite all the speakers up to take part in the panel discussion and let you have the opportunity to ask any questions that you would like. Or do you all understand everything, which would be wonderful?
No.